everyone. I hope you're safe and well wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining us to talk about the pro bono work that's being undertaken by the Cambridge students. My name is Dr Jodi Gardner, and I'm a lecturer in private law at the law faculty and a fellow at St John's College. I started my career as a community advocate and then community lawyer in Australia, so I'm exceptionally passionate about pro bono work and using legal knowledge and skills to improve the world. I'm also delighted to be joined by two past and present pro bono coordinators of the Cambridge University Law Society, Amelia and Natasha. I'm just going to share my screen as we've got some slides to go through with everyone. So welcome to this Alumni Festival event. Some housekeeping notes before we start on the substantive material. This webinar will have a Q&A at the end. We'll have plenty of time to go through any questions that you might have of Natasha or Amelia. So please do send questions throughout the discussion and we'll come back to them at the end. We will hopefully have time to answer all the questions, but I'm sorry if we do run out of time. I also want to let you all know that this event is being recorded and will be uploaded onto either our Dear World Yours Cambridge YouTube channel or the festival website using SoundCloud. Pro bono work is important and powerful. It can right historical wrongs and it can address inequalities and vulnerabilities. It is crucial all around the world, but to me, it has particular importance for the Cambridge Law faculty. Cambridge is a city of contrast. It houses one of the oldest and most respected universities in the world and has the highest percentage of residents with higher education qualifications anywhere in the UK. It is, however, struggling under the weight of poverty and inequality. On the basis of the Gini coefficient, Cambridge is the least equal city in the United Kingdom and has been for a number of years. It has the second highest house prices and the third worst housing affordability ratio. This poverty has had significant impact throughout our community, and there's a life expectancy difference of 10 years between the highest ranked neighbourhood compared with the lowest. I was therefore delighted to be given the opportunity to work with the Cambridge University Law Society on developing pro bono initiatives for students. The amount that they have achieved during a global pandemic is both incredible and exhausting. Despite having worked with them for only a year, the team were nominated for an Access to Justice Foundation Award and came highly commended. And Natasha won the Vice Chancellor's Social Impact Award. So as you can imagine, I'm incredibly proud of them all. I'm now going to pass you to Amelia Quince to talk more about the different activities they've done over the past year. Amelia is a second-year law student at Churchill College. She has a passion for pro bono work, being the pro bono freshers representative for Cambridge University Law Society in her first year, and having recently been appointed as head of pro bono for 2021-2022 year. Amelia works as a research and campaign volunteer for Citizens Advice, South Lincolnshire, where she's produced films on campaigns, led talks on scam awareness, and recently founded an Access to Legal Help campaign. She also volunteers as a leader for Girl Guiding, leading girls in sessions that inspire their creativity, innovation, and critical thinking. Amelia's hobbies include creative writing, watching Sherlock, singing, and theatre. She has a cat called Lucy, who was adopted from the RSPCA 10 years ago, that Amelia misses greatly when she's in Cambridge. And her ideal future career would be as a barrister, working in public law and human rights. Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you very much, Jodi, for that wonderful introduction. So I thought I'd just start off my talk by telling you a little bit about why I wanted to study law, my reasons for getting involved in pro bono, and how I luckily ended up as head of pro bono. And so the story sort of starts with an experience I had when I was on work experience shadowing a barrister in court one day. He was representing an insurance company and they were bringing somebody into court for their failure to pay. When we arrived at court, we saw the lady that we were supposedly up against. She was unrepresented and in floods of tears. And she spoke to us about how bailiffs had raided her house 3 times and found nothing that they could take, how she'd lost her job through no fault of her own, and how her debt had resulted from helping a family member abroad who was unwell. And when we entered into court, the barrister I was shadowing somehow wrote off her debt and asked the judge that he wasn't paid for that day's work in court. And when we got out of court and we explained to this lady that she was no longer forced to pay this debt, she was back in floods of tears and she couldn't thank us enough. And when we left court, the barrister turned to me and said, "I shouldn't have done that, but sometimes you have to do what's right." And those words and that scenario has stayed with me ever since, because when I think about the sort of person I want to be, the sort of lawyer that I want to be, that is exactly it. So when I wrote my personal statement and I applied for law at several universities, I talked about that situation, and I started off with the line, "I do not expect to change the world with my law degree, but I would like to change the way that many people experience it." And that was an acknowledgement that many people see the motivation of going into law to help people and help them out of difficult situations as a little bit of a cliche. Sometimes they think that you're only saying that because you're in it for the money, you're in it for the flashy life. That's not really what you want to do. And to an extent, I can understand why people might be a little bit cynical about the idea that you can study law and change the world, because you do have to be realistic about what you can do. But I don't think there's anything cliche about wanting to come into law to make a difference to people's lives and their own individual worlds. I think we're all in a position where you have an incredible education, you've got that advantage, and it's about using that education to help people out of often very dark places. So that's the reason that I want to study law, and it's to make a difference to people's own worlds. And this is something that I always wanted to do, and it's always been at the forefront of my mind when looking at careers and looking at different university courses. But I also realised that it wasn't something that I had to do once I'd graduated, or something that I had to wait to do during a career. It was something I could start now. So when I was in sixth form, I joined my local Citizens Advice South Lincolnshire, and I volunteered on the research and campaigns team. Not many people know a lot about research and campaigns. They tend to think Citizens Advice is all about advising, but the research and campaigns team is all about analysing data. So we look at the clients that have come to us, the issues they're having, and we try and campaign on a wider scale to deal with those issues. So I've worked on various campaigns. I've worked on scams awareness, universal credit reform, energy and debt. I've produced campaign films, and I've led presentations to raise awareness. At the moment, I'm also leading an access to legal help campaign, and the aim of that campaign is to improve our signposting services. So I realised there was a real pattern of clients coming in who weren't eligible for legal aid, whereas once they probably would have been, and they can't afford a lawyer. So I've been looking into creating better contacts and connections with pro bono organisations who could help them. So I still work in my role in research and campaigns, and I also now work on the pro bono department at the Cambridge University Law Society. So last year, as Jodi said, I applied to be a Freshers representative, and I worked on the International Law Book Facility campaign. I'll talk about that in much more detail later, but working with the team and working in calls was an absolute joy. I loved every second of it, and that's why I decided to apply to be head of pro bono, and I was very lucky to land the role. I've got much to live up to this year, I know that, but I do hope to continue our fantastic work from last year, using that enthusiasm and that passion that I've got for pro bono to encourage students to volunteer and find that same passion too. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm now going to talk about the fantastic projects that we worked with last year, discuss a little bit about what we did and our future plans. So last year we worked with Amicus. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this because I know Natasha has a fantastic presentation lined up. But in essence, we worked on a research project into the disproportionate application of the death penalty. We had great success working on this project last year. So we just operated our summer round of the project, and we're aiming to have more rounds in Christmas, Easter and summer. We're also hoping to run fundraising and awareness events for Amicus this year. We also worked with Citizens Advice Cambridge last year to open up discussions about student placements. Now, as you all know, Citizens Advice is very close to my heart. It's an excellent place for students to volunteer, especially if they're interested in law, because there's research opportunities and the advisory role. And I'm really hoping that we can work in partnership with them and provide these opportunities to students. Last year, we also partnered with the Access to Justice Foundation, and we worked with them on a fundraiser entitled Run the Extra Mile for Justice. Students could raise money for the foundation, and there were prizes for those that raised the most money. Our partnership continues again this year with the Cambridge Legal Walk. Now, this event will be held on the 4th of October at 5:30. We encourage all of you who are in Cambridge to come along and walk with us. The event will help raise funds for free legal advice centres, which provide an invaluable service to many in the community. We've been promoting the event amongst our students and local firms and charities who will be fundraising. We're very excited to get walking on the 4th of October at 5:30. Do write it down and come and join us. And also last year, we marked the first year of our Cambridge Pro Bono Awards. The aim of the awards is to celebrate the pro bono work carried out by students. We had a bronze category that celebrated 15+ hours, silver, which celebrated 30+, gold, which celebrated 50+, and platinum, which celebrated 80+. 47 students received awards this year, and our virtual awards ceremony was a great success. We'll be running the awards ceremony again this year, hopefully in person, and we'll be celebrating the success of our students once again. And just to highlight that the 47 students that received awards last year were doing pro bono work alongside their studies, and they did an incredible job, and we're really, really proud. Finally, to get onto the International Law Book Facility project. Now, this project was the one I was directly involved with last year. And the International Law Book Facility is a project that collects previous editions of law books and ships them internationally to not-for-profit organisations. These organisations would benefit from having greater access to legal resources and education. We faced a lot of challenges due to the pandemic. We had a lot of replanning and a lot of reorganisation, but we were able to carry out the project at the end of Easter term. We collected books from 12 college libraries in a van that we hired, which was driven by my dad and somehow reversed all the way down Senate House Passage and back. Not sure how he did it, but he did. And we delivered all of the boxes to the conference centre at Wolfson College, where we had a team who were sorting and packing the books. We ended up with 50 boxes for Asosa University in Ethiopia and 10 boxes for Justice Defenders in Uganda. The boxes were shipped to Clifford Chance Storage to then be shipped to the organisations. We're very much looking forward to seeing the books arrive, and we're very excited to work with ILBF again this year to hopefully collect and ship even more books. So that was just an overview of the projects we worked with last year. We're really excited to work with them again this year and to develop some new pro bono opportunities for students. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amelia. That's fabulous. Now we get to hear from Natasha. Natasha has recently graduated from her law degree at Cambridge, having obtained a first-class degree and the second highest mark in her cohort. With a keen interest in human rights, access to justice, and gender equality, Natasha has dedicated her time to founding numerous pro bono projects alongside her degree as the pro bono coordinator for the Cambridge University Law Society. She volunteers with a number of organisations, including Citizens Advice and Project Access. Ahead of her training contract at the international law firm Clifford Chance, Natasha has undertaken an internship with the pro bono team and represented the firm at One Young World Summit 2021. A strong advocate for climate justice, Natasha is working with Humanitarian Affairs Asia to chair a Green Summit at the United Nations in Bangkok. While solo backpacking across Southeast Asia, Natasha has also volunteered in Nepal and Malaysia. In recognition of her pro bono work, Natasha was selected as winner of the Vice Chancellor Social Impact Award 2021. When she's not globetrotting, Natasha can be found curled up reading a classic novel, deeply engrossed in a Netflix crime documentary, or taking her dog Bailey for long strolls on the beach. Thank you very much, Natasha.
Thank you, Jodi, for that introduction. And thank you, Amelia, for outlining your experience and all the pro bono projects that we were able to create last year. So when joining the pro bono team last year, I realized that students in this role in the past often had amazing ideas, but had struggled to get successful projects off the ground. So I had this vision of building relationships with charities and creating long-term sustainable projects that would engage students in pro bono work and allow them to give back to the community. And I love my role, like Amelia, and with the support of Jodi and the law faculty and the hard work of our subcommittee members, we have managed to create some really exciting projects that we believe are contributing to real change. So I'm incredibly proud that, of what we were able to achieve, and hopefully those projects we have established will continue for years to come. From the outset of my degree, I have been driven by this idea that law can be used as a tool to instigate social change. And like Amelia and myself, so many students are attracted to law because of this opportunity to protect individuals' rights and seek justice. And because of this motivation, I've remained committed to volunteering with various charities, and I seek to do so throughout my entire legal career. Similar to Amelia, I've been a volunteer advisor at Citizens Advice in Blackpool for 4 years, providing face-to-face, telephone and email advice. And from the start of my volunteering, I realised the value of working face-to-face with members of the local community, hearing about their issues at times where they are often quite vulnerable and in great hardship, and being able to use the tools and knowledge that I had to help them to overcome that. I felt like I understood my community better, and I learned to empathise with people from a variety of different backgrounds. And that was incredibly rewarding and something I would recommend that all law students get involved with. I'm also a keen traveller because it allows you to meet new people, explore new cultures, and gain perspectives that you will not have experienced otherwise. I've volunteered abroad in Nepal and Malaysia, and I've also worked with a Cambridge charity called AfroInspire to support community projects in East Africa. And I'm particularly dedicated to this charity, Help Nepal, where I spent a month volunteering in a primary school in a remote village, where I think only one person spoke English, but I could still learn so much from their culture and their kindness to welcome me into their community. And by volunteering in the community itself, you can also see the hardship that communities face and try to find ways to support them to overcome it. And this was really the turning point for me, where I realized that young people can make a huge difference just by small ideas. And one of the things we noticed was that was newly built libraries that contain no books. And I've always been a firm advocate for access to justice and recognise the privilege of attending incredible institutions like Cambridge. So on return from Nepal, in my role as president of the Cambridge Society to Help Nepal, I founded a book campaign to send 2,000 children's books to the schools, and we are currently working on establishing this as an annual project. And again, this was when I realized that no one is too small to make a difference, and it only starts with one idea that can spiral into something that makes truly meaningful change. Beyond this, I'm a keen activist for climate justice, and as Jodi said in the introduction, I'm working with Humanitarian Affairs Asia to chair their Green Summit to be held at the United Nations in Bangkok. And I'm leading a team of 15 young leaders from around the world who are assisting in the promotion, recruitment, and execution of the event. And it'll be a week of speakers, green workshops, and a day of sustainable volunteering in Thailand, including tree planting, ocean conservation, and river cleaning. The aim is to engage young people in the UN Sustainable Development Goals and empower them to take action. And we, as the Green Summit Committee, truly believe in the power of young people to create meaningful change. Going back to the work of the Cambridge Law Society, it was an amazing opportunity to share my passion volunteering through my role as pro bono coordinator. And my favourite project that I established last year was with Amicus. Amicus is an incredible charity that helps provide representation for those facing the death penalty in the United States. They believe that the death penalty is disproportionately imposed on the most vulnerable in society, violating their right to due process and equal justice before the law. Their aims are to provide better access to justice and to raise awareness of potential abuses of defendants' rights. Last year, if we move on to the next slide, we made Amicus our key pro bono partner, and we organised a speakers event that raised awareness on issues surrounding the death penalty, the work of Amicus, and the experiences of 2 previous volunteers from the US offices. We hosted a fundraiser for Amicus, which was a movie screening of Clemency, which can be purchased online, and the proceeds go to Amicus. And most notably, we established a team of over 70 students that contributed to Amicus's Missouri project. And we have a nice overview of the Missouri project again on the next slide. So in the wake of the landmark US case of Thurman in Georgia in 1972, the constitutional legitimacy of capital punishment came under intense scrutiny. Missouri's new legal regime limited death penalty cases to a narrow category of the most serious cases. And this led to the foundation of a large research project into the disproportionate application of the death penalty by Amicus, where they identified striking issues of bias and prejudice, such as racial discrimination. Amicus has worked with top law firms to carry out their first round of analysis of cases, and now they've opened it to students at different universities to carry out the second round. And our pro bono team partnered with Amicus to establish a team of over 70 students contributing to the project. And as Amelia mentioned, we've just had our second round of students working on the project over summer, and we hope it will continue as a long-term project. I've also personally undertaken Amicus's training course in US capital defense law and procedure, legal research, evidence, and professional conduct, which they hold twice a year. And this was an excellent course that provided a thorough overview of issues surrounding capital punishment. And I hope to be able to undertake an internship in one of their offices in the US next year. The feedback we've been given is overwhelmingly positive. The students want to be engaged in practical legal work beyond academic reading. And these types of projects provide them with hands-on experience that build the practical skills necessary to be an effective lawyer. Finally, as a recent graduate, I'll be starting a training contract at the London law firm Clifford Chance next year. And I've undertaken a LIFT internship for future trainees in their pro bono department, where I learned about the firm's pro bono strategy and their global strategic pro bono clients. Law firms are increasingly creating their own pro bono strategy to integrate responsible business at the core of the firm. And by taking on long-term pro bono clients, lawyers can better understand the needs of the communities they serve. And this ensures that firms are complying with the responsible standards that they have set for themselves, as well as contributing to global targets such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And students are increasingly expecting firms to commit to their responsible business standards by investing their resources in pro bono and providing opportunities for their employees to contribute. And not only does this encourage diversity of experience and skills, but it provides a sense of fulfillment that maintains employees' commitment to their work. So by increasing opportunities for students to engage in pro bono work at university, this will mirror recent developments in legal practice, where firms are increasingly placing pro bono and responsible business at the heart of their business strategy.
Thank you very much, Natasha. And it's fascinating to hear how this is all being wrapped up back into the commercial firms. And we don't have any specific questions yet, but please do send your questions in, because we do have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes now for any questions that you might have. And considering the last comments that you were saying, it leads me on to a question that I have, which is, when I talk about pro bono, a lot of people agree that pro bono work is relevant for students who might want to go into community legal centres or legal aid or be human rights barristers, but they don't see the value of this kind of work to students who might want to go to the commercial bar or go to one of the top tier law firms. Do you agree with that, or what is the value more generally? Natasha, do you want to start and then hand over to Amelia?
Yeah, I think this is a question which I think you'll get asked a lot if you say you're interested in pro bono and human rights, but you're then going to work for a commercial law firm. And I think people often see it as two ends of the spectrum. You can either be interested in commercial and corporate work, or you can be interested in human rights and pro bono and doing good for the world. But the reality is that it's not that clear cut, and there are a lot of people going into these jobs that have a passion for social change. And more that is becoming integrated into business practices as well. They have to be compliant with business and human rights standards. And as I've mentioned, most firms and also barristers' chambers and different organisations will have their own pro bono strategy and pro bono clients. So it's definitely not something where only if you're going into community service, this is of interest. It's affecting everyone. And beyond that, there are so many skills that you gain from pro bono, whether it's just working with the community and understanding their perspective, or whether it's physical skills like interviewing, engaging with clients, research and drafting. These are all so necessary to be an effective lawyer that I highly recommend it to anyone wanting to do law.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Natasha's saying. And I think that last bit really is key. Pro bono informs you as a person. It makes you more aware to your community around you. It enhances your research skills. And it's very important to have that lens beyond, the people or your family or you. And I think that's what pro bono enables you to do. So it doesn't matter what area you're going into, whether you're a lawyer or not, it really does enhance you as a person.
Fantastic. Thank you both. We've got the questions streaming in now, so I might not get a chance to ask the rest of my questions. But the first question we had was from Mark Reuter, who said, Natasha, in your presentation, you spoke about the benefits of working face-to-face with people. Could you say a bit more about the value in a personal connection with clients, as opposed to a Zoom connection or simply written legal work? And again, do you want to start with Natasha and then we can go to Amelia?
Yeah. Well, firstly, through any pro bono work that you do, so for example, with a research project that didn't involve client interaction, there are still so many key skills that you can learn through doing that type of work. And again, even if it's just research and drafting, which will help you in whatever career you go into, it's also the work that you're doing for a charity which is doing directly meaningful work. So there are a whole range of pro bono activities which can contribute to creating effective change. But something personally I found very meaningful to me is when I have been able to interact with clients. And Zoom calls are still beneficial because you've still got that it's face to face, even if it is online, where you can have a conversation with someone and really get to know them. But particularly face to face, where you have to be engaged, you have to listen to them, you can actually see their body language and react to it, and it feels a little less maybe automatic and mechanical than being online, even though we've got so used to it over the past couple of years. But it is about building that personal connection with clients and showing that you are there to represent their interests, which I think is so crucial to that type of work.
Again, you sum it up beautifully, but yeah, there's something about being in person and forming those real human connections. I think as people, we're much more likely to open up to other people in person, especially when you work for organisations like Citizens Advice, when there's so much about trust, and they really need to be able to trust you when they're telling you about your problems. And I think some of that just comes from being human, just being there next to them. But at the same time, there are benefits of being online. And that's something I've noticed with my Access to Legal Help campaign, because we're looking at local firms and local organisations that can help. But now we've had this shift and so much more is online, actually we can start looking at the big legal centres in London that might be able to provide help to us over the phone or over video call. So there are benefits of being online, but you can't really get better than that sort of in-person human connection. I agree.
Fantastic. So we've got a number of other questions. We've got one coming from Sebastian Abajara, who asks, as an international student, is it possible to get involved in pro bono projects? And after finishing studies, is it possible to find professional options to keep working in pro bono organisations? Amelia, why don't you start this one and then we can go to Natasha.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible to get involved in pro bono organisations. There are so many. I mean, we've only really gone across the surface with the ones that we work with. Like we talked about, there's Amicus, the Citizens Advice in the UK, but look international, there's so many that I probably couldn't even listen to you. In terms of professional options, there are many people in the legal profession, barristers, solicitors, who work pro bono when they have a chance, and they will work with charities, organisations as well. So there's definitely the options there. I think it's a matter of research. Look online. Twitter is an amazing tool for connecting with people across the legal profession as well. So yeah, definitely look into those options.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Amelia said. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn for connecting with people. I'm not quite on Twitter yet. But I think definitely for the law society opportunities, like anyone can get involved. You don't have to be a law student either. And at Citizens Advice, it's not legal advice that you give either. So you don't need to have a law degree to get involved there. And international students, they would welcome as well, because you receive full training. So as long as you're willing to go and do that training and do your research, then I'm sure many charities would have opportunities for you to get involved. And in terms of careers, again, just do your research, but most businesses and organizations will have some sort of pro bono practice and opportunities to do volunteering or pro bono work. And an alternative is that you just volunteer alongside your work with a charity that means something to you as well.
Actually, I think Sebastian's given us a very good future project that we could try and create some sort of manual or list of different organisations that people can do pro bono work with, both during their studies but also when they're finished. So to create some sort of contents and also contacts at those organisations. So I know that you guys are already exceptionally busy, but Amelia, we might need to put that down on the to-do list.
Yeah, definitely will.
Fabulous. We've got a question from Sukhwant Singh, who says, do you feel that the practicing legal profession is enthusiastically supportive of pro bono? So again, Amelia, did you want to start and then go to Natasha?
Yeah, I think it would be a bit ambitious for me to talk on behalf of legal profession, but in terms of people I've come across, they definitely are enthusiastic about it. I think there has been a real shift in our political environment. There has been cuts to legal aid and closures of magistrates' courts. That has forced a lot of people who would have been eligible for free legal help to no longer have anywhere to go. And that's the fear I had, and that's why I started up my Access Legal Help campaign. And I think the legal profession are also scared about what is happening to the rule of law and access to justice as a result of these changes. And we see people like the Secret Barrister, for instance, who is raising awareness through books on Twitter of these issues. So from what I've seen of the profession and people I've spoken to, I think there is a real enthusiasm for this because people realise it's needed. And to uphold our commitment to access to justice and to the rule of law, we do need to work with pro bono at the moment until we can get to a situation where hopefully things improve.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it's the legal aid cuts are something which are concerning a lot of people, that it's going to really impede on effective access to justice. And that's where pro bono by lawyers can fill in these legal gaps where there isn't sufficient legal aid funding on a lot of areas of law. But at the same time, we don't want it to be at the point where pro bono is a replacement for legal aid, because we need those lawyers going into those social areas of law and having that necessary expertise that other lawyers at commercial law firms might not have. But generally, I would say 100% there is a shift that companies, law firms, chambers are recognising the value of pro bono work and social issues more generally. Again, many have their own pro bono practices. So previously they might just take on like the odd case of pro bono work, whereas now they're taking on long-term clients so they can better understand their needs. If you're interested, you can look at the rise of ESG, which is environmental, social and governance targets, where they're looking at like these social issues and environmental issues and making sure it's integrated into their work. And a lot of their clients, like businesses, now have to comply with United Nations principles on human rights, which means that lawyers now also have to be aware of all these standards so that it can be implemented throughout their work. So this just all reflects this bigger change at the core of firms and businesses, that they need to understand human rights, and pro bono work better to serve individuals and communities that are in need.
Thank you very much. I know I'm the chair, so I should be sitting back and letting you two talk. But when I was a community lawyer in Australia, there was a huge support from the legal profession about our roles, because if we weren't there, it was self-represented litigants, and self-represented litigants are not good for anyone. They're not good for the litigants themselves, obviously, but they're not good for access to justice, for the courts, and for the parties that are coming up against them. So whilst they supported work, obviously on moral grounds about the importance of everyone having representation, they also supported it on a wide range of practical grounds as well. So I do think there is this ongoing support from the profession and increasing involvement in the profession. As Natasha was saying, more and more firms and barristers are creating and meeting pro bono targets themselves, because they understand that law is not just a job, it's a profession. And we have greater responsibilities to societies as lawyers, and doing pro bono is a huge part of that responsibility. And excellent. Well, I will stop taking over and I'll go back to the questions. So we've got one from Peter who says, when you talk about pro bono clients, are these principally organizations or are they individuals? And Natasha, do you want to start on this one and then we can go to Amelia?
Yeah, it can be either, and it probably depends on the organization you're talking about. So at law firms, it's principally, say, charities and NGOs, so large organizations, and then law firms might help out with any sort of legal tasks that they need. But it's also possible for them to take on individuals and represent them. It might be less common at, say, a commercial law firm, but more common at a barrister's chambers, where they might represent individuals in need.
Yeah, exactly what Natasha said. I'd only add that when I sort of mentioned pro bono clients, I'm talking principally about individuals that might go to their local citizens advice and say that they have a legal issue. They've tried to apply for legal aid, but they're not eligible, but they don't have enough money to go to a law firm or a chambers. So in that regard, I'm looking for organisations, firms, chambers that might be able to work on their case pro bono.
We've got a question from Yara that I think will be really relevant for both of you. In your experience, what has been the main obstacle you were faced with when bringing project ideas into fruition? And what would you say is the best way to take a simple idea up to the next level? And I wonder, in answering that, if you guys could think of a project that you've done and how you took it from that initial idea to make it a successful and ongoing project. Thank you.
Amelia, my immediate thought is ILBF, because we came across so many challenges last year. Do you want to go into detail on that one?
Yeah, I can do. So obviously the challenges we had with ILBF was principally the pandemic, which I think obviously has affected all of us, but has especially affected pro bono organisations in the work that they do. And the problem we had was that we were trying to collect books from students, and the idea was that we'd have a sort of collection point in the law faculty and people could drop off their textbooks there. Then all of a sudden we were doing Lent term from home and it was like, no one's in the law faculty, so how are we going to do this? And so that was an obstacle there. The other obstacle we had was logistics. It was just that sort of initial fear of how on earth are we going to pull this off, because we've got all of these places that have these books. We need to somehow get a venue to be able to pack them and get them ready for shipping. We need to store them somewhere. Then it was like, what do we do with the books that we can't send to these organisations because they're not the books they're after, or they're not relevant? So there are so many questions. And when you're sort of in the midst of your degree as well, and you've got 100 pages of reading to do for tomorrow, and you're like, how on earth are we going to get this off the ground? It can feel quite overwhelming. But I think so much of it is about working as a team and realizing that it's not all on your back. It's not all your responsibility. You can just sit down and talk about it. And these problems that seem really big, like, where are we going to pack the books? Well, actually, Amelia, just look, we'll find a venue and we'll find somewhere to pack them. So it can seem quite overwhelming to do something like that at first, but breaking these things down into small, manageable tasks as a team is really how we got somewhere with ILBF. Then your sort of second question, best way to take a simple idea to the next level. I think it's really just brainstorming. Like, you get that initial sort of seed of an idea and you just talk it out. You write down everything you can think of to do with that idea. And then you just research into all these different avenues, like when we looked for a venue, like when we contacted the libraries. That's all we had to do, really. What was I going to say? And yeah, in terms of how we overcame the obstacle with the pandemic, we then focused on the college libraries because we realized that they're going to have the books all year round. So we then targeted them, and then that's how we pulled it off. So I think that's ILBF summed up.
I think that was one of my favorite projects because it felt almost impossible throughout the year, and then it all came together at the end and it was really rewarding. But every single project we did last year was from scratch. Most of them were just ideas or interests of people, and we were like, okay, how do we turn this into a tangible project, working around the issues of COVID. So all the projects they'd considered in the past were suddenly out the window because we had to do things where it didn't involve people being in person. So we had to re-strategize and think, okay, how can we allow students to be engaged in pro bono work whilst possibly working from home or even from abroad? And that's why we focused on like a research project with Amicus instead. or at Citizens Advice, we're hoping to do email advice. So not everyone has to go in person. It makes it more accessible. It's also better to start with lots of ideas and then speak to people and see whether it's possible. Like, we were desperately keen to set up a legal clinic, but that hasn't been possible. So we've tried to navigate around it by partnering with Citizens Advice, so students can still have some opportunity to provide advice, even if it's not legal and it's not as amazing as a legal clinic would be. So it's providing different opportunities to get around it. And as Amelia said, like, teamwork is key, communication is key, finding people like the wonderful Jodi in the law faculty to support us on our projects. It can't all be one person, and finding the people that can help you with it is so crucial. So doing lots of research and then recognizing that change is slow and progress is slow. So start small, and then if something is successful, you can expand it into something bigger.
Yes, thank you. Now, final question we have, and it's a perfect question to end off this fabulous panel discussion, from Rachel De Cruz, who asks, how can new students to the university get involved in Cull's Pro Bono Society or Citizens Advice?
Yeah, I'll steal this question off of Natasha. So our website, we have the Cull's website, where we will be posting blogs and updates about how you can get involved. So I'll put that in the chat. We have our Facebook page, and we also have a Twitter, which is just Cull's Pro Bono, and we advertise all of our opportunities on there. We have committee applications opening up soon, which we really hope a lot of people will apply for. And we'll also advertise opportunities like Amicus and Citizens Advice. So we're hoping to partner with Citizens Advice to provide placements for students, but you can, as an individual, apply as well. So all you need to do is look up Citizens Advice and look at your local Citizens Advice, or the one in Cambridge if you're a student, and they should have volunteering opportunities on there. So you should be able to just contact them. They'll arrange an interview after you've done an application form, and you can just go from there. Oh, I've seen Daniel's been putting it in the group chat. Thank you.
Natasha, did you have anything to add to that?
Not much, except just do lots of research. If you have an interest, try and find charities or different organisations to get involved with in that area, and just drop them an email. And sometimes it says on their website there are volunteering opportunities. Other times you can just message them and see, because lots of charities will appreciate the support of many individuals. So just be proactive and see what you can find.
Thank you all very much. And thank you to everyone for joining us and listening to what I thought was an incredibly interesting and inspiring presentation by these two very impressive women. As I'm sure you now understand, you can see why I said they were both impressive but exhausting, because you have to remember that they did all of this in a global pandemic whilst also doing incredibly intensive Cambridge legal studies as well. So they are absolute inspirations to us all. We've got one last chance if there's any more questions that come up. If not, we'll have to finish up. So thank you all very much. Just a reminder, oh, we do have one final question. No, it was Peter making a comment saying thank you everyone for an excellent and enlightening talk. That is our pleasure. But this event has been recorded and it will be uploaded on either Dear World, Yours Cambridge YouTube channel, or the festival website using SoundCloud. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.